Meet the Woman Who Fell in Love with Her Psychiatrist and made 18 TikToks about it.
I actually know Kendra who fell in love with her psychiatrist. She said, well, normally it is like ADHD coaching, but like I'm more than happy to do like sobriety coaching with you.
If someone is telling you that they can help you with any problem despite their lack of qualifications, run the other way. What is up? Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to the channel. Hi if you're new here, hi if you're not. My name's Danielle, and today we're going to talk about this 18-part TikTok drama.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will do a quick summary, but that's actually not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about today is that this woman who fell in love with her psychiatrist actually calls herself an ADHD coach and actually had clients that were paying her lots of money and allegedly maybe wasn't actually delivering on the services that she promised to provide. So we're going to learn about that, but first let's get into the 18-part TikTok series. And at risk of this video having to be like 1,000 hours long, we're not going to get into the specific TikTok drama, unless you guys want me to. I can do it in a separate video, I suppose, but I will give you the Cliff Notes version and we will watch part 1 so you can kind of, get a feel for what we're talking about here. A little bit of context, if you will. I'm also going to link an article in the description titled Meet the Woman Who Fell in Love with Her Psychiatrist and Made 18 TikToks About It. If you do want to, get caught up to speed, that'll be linked down below. So let's go into the first video, just so you can get a little bit more context in case you missed it.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college, and then I went off of them because they just weren't, like, the side effects were too much over the benefits. But then in my late 20s, I read this book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. For my fellow ADHDers, there's so many good things in here. And the biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist.
I don't know how much context that actually provides, but she then goes on to, detail the experience of being a client of this person. And she goes on to mention how he was really good at pretending to care about her and pretending to listen to what she had to say. And she alleges that he used the stories and things that she would tell him in order to be able to manipulate her into falling in love with him. I'm not here to diagnose anyone. I'm not here to assess the situation at all and say whether or not her experience is true. I believe that for her, she believes that her experience was the way it was, but us as the viewers on the outside, we're obviously only going to know what she shares, and we can kind of deduce based on, our knowledge of the world and our own lived experience to kind of discern whether or not we want to believe that her story is true. So I'm not here to necessarily comment on that. I would encourage you to either go ahead and watch the whole series yourself or read the article that I have linked down below, as it does escalate quite a bit in the later videos where she has a stream about him, and she's very presumptuous about his response to that comment and so forth. So anyways, that's not what I wanted to talk about today. The reason why I decided to even make this video is because this particular individual, who has exhibited some rather questionable behavior, does apparently also identify as an ADHD coach, as in she coaches individuals with ADHD. Now, I made a video probably over 2 years ago now, because I believe I filmed it in my old apartment. I will link it here. And in that video, I discuss, the concept of ADHD coaching, and I don't really remember entirely what I said in that video, and my views may very well have changed over the years since then. As I know, when I first started this channel, I was very much on the anti-coaching train. And I believe it's become pretty clear over the years that has evolved, and I do see a space for coaching to be effective for people, but I will still stand on the fact that I personally do not believe your lived experience alone qualifies you to help people specifically with a mental health diagnosis. So if you yourself have ADHD and you are diagnosed with ADHD, I personally am of the belief that that in itself does not qualify you to then charge other people money to help them navigate their ADHD. Could you potentially do some sort of extra study or certification in order to become an ADHD coach? Sure, provided that you're going to, a regulatory body, you're adhering to some sort of ethics guidelines. I mean, the conversation there is quite complicated and nuanced, but to simply have a singular lived experience or diagnosis and then say that then qualifies you to help other people with their own diagnosis, not a fan whatsoever. And so on her website explicitly, it does state ADHD mindset coach. Living with ADHD brings unique challenges, but it also holds powerful potential. If you're ready to unlock that potential, you're in the right place. My coaching practice focuses on 3 key areas designed to help you live confidently, manage your time, and embrace a healthy lifestyle that works for you. And so nowhere on this landing page does it have what her qualifications are or whether or not she is some kind of certified coach. It simply just allows you to apply for coaching, which is you booking like a 45-minute sales call. So sharing all that just to hopefully set the scene, provide a little bit more context as we get into the actual videos we're going to be reacting to today. So I'm not going to explain too much as this individual kind of gives you the context you need, but let's just go ahead and jump right into the first video.
Okay, so this is really awkward, guys. I actually know Kendra, who fell in love with her psychiatrist. I've actually known her for many years, and I was one of her coaching clients for the last 3 months. And to say that I am really disturbed and confused and like not feeling really great about this would like be an understatement. So definitely, if you guys want, I'll get into it and talk about the coaching and kind of like my thoughts and feelings afterwards. I mean, I don't really have any thoughts one way or another about like her psychological state, really. Well, maybe I do, but like I'm an accountant. I'm not really someone who can like diagnose or anything, but I can talk about like what happened in our sessions and just kind of like I became one of her clients like right after she stopped using both her therapist and this like psychiatrist guy. And now that I know that, that really does add like an additional negative layer to like our experience together. So let's get into it. I guess this is going to be like part 1 of, I don't know. I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm not trying to do like 30 parts, guys. I just really need to talk about it. So I've actually known Kendra since 2018. We both used to live in the same city in Oregon. And we actually met through an extracurricular activity that we were both in and became like really good friends while we lived out there. In 2020, I moved away, and then shortly after, she moved to where she is now. And as with like a lot of things in 2020, we kind of like lost touch, and so like we weren't like texting each other all the time, but we were like still friends on Instagram. And over time, like I know, she made it very public when she went sober, and I just always kind of remembered that and supported her. And this past spring, I had an incident where I was in a position where like I really needed to go on a sobriety journey, and I was at like a really low point, and I was just like, who can I reach out to that I know that's like been through this? And I thought of Kendra, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder, I hope that like she'd be able to like talk to me about it, like as a friend. We had been friends for a really long time, and I was really hoping that like as a friend she would be able to like help me with this new journey that I was going to go on. So I had reached out to her, and that's when she basically like tried to get me to do her coaching. Okay, I'm going to try it and put the screenshot from her text, but I'm not great at TikTok, so TBD.
So the text on screen here reads, "Hey Kendra, it's Emily, reaching out to see if you have some time this week to chat sobriety/starting that journey." Kendra then replies, "Hi Emily, good to hear from you. I would love to chat. Use my link to book a discovery call and let's meet on Zoom. Don't worry about answering the questions asking about paying for coaching. Glad you reached out. Talk to you soon."
But I like reached out to her for some advice, and she told me to book a session and that we would talk more about it. This should have been a red flag.
That's interesting to me that now in retrospect, obviously this woman is saying, that should have been a red flag, because I don't necessarily, and please let me know what you think in the comments, I don't necessarily know that I would myself see that as a red flag. If I reached out to an old friend who I maybe hadn't chatted with in the past few years and was looking for support with something in the age of 2025 where everything is online, especially if the other person is an online business owner or online service provider, I don't think it's unusual to send someone a calendar link. Like if one of my friends reached out and was like, hey, can we meet and chat? I would probably send them my Google Calendar meeting link. And maybe that's just me, but from like an organization perspective, it's so much easier to just like have people book into my calendar so that we don't have to go back and forth and coordinate a time, especially if in her messages she's saying, you know,
don't answer the questions about coaching, but here's where you can book a call.
If I have that sort of reference point of us being friends and having an existing relationship, my automatic assumption wouldn't be that,
oh, she's probably going to pitch me a program.
Because in any other context, if I was reaching out to an old friend to ask for help with something and they offered to, you know, meet with me on Zoom, I'm not just going to assume that they're going to want to charge me money for that, right? So I just think like it's not fair to blame yourself of like, oh, I should have seen it as a red flag, because how? How could you have seen that in this day and age where everything is digital? Okay, and then all that aside, I also want to address the fact that not only am I going to assume the best of people who I have an existing relationship with, but if I am also in a position where I'm struggling with my sobriety, or I'm maybe struggling with my relationship with alcohol and knowing that I need to, you know, start this sober journey, that's also a very vulnerable position to be in, where you're not going to be able to look out for those red flags, even if you are aware of them ahead of time. This is something that I talk about at length here on the channel. If you have not ever seen this video, I would encourage you to go watch it. I go over, you know, why people fall for scams, and it has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has mostly to do with your level of vulnerability. And when you find yourself in a position in your life where you are struggling with some sort of circumstance, whether it's sobriety, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your ability to make money, whether it's your confidence, whether it's blah, 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 insert life problem here, you are in a position where people, bad people, are going to be able to potentially take advantage of you. So that's something to also keep in mind in the context of this story, that she wasn't, you know, in this great place where life was sunshine and rainbows and everything was going great. She clearly had an issue she was struggling with and was seeking help from someone who she thought was her friend. Oh my God, we're only like a minute in and I already hate it here.
Okay, so I guess this is part 2 of I don't know who the hell I was friends with and let coach me and take advantage of me at like a really vulnerable time in my life.
Side note, the search bar here says coaching and therapy. So if you don't know or you don't use TikTok, it will recommend you searches based on the context of the video. So I just find that funny that people are searching coaching and therapy after watching this video, which again, I have a full video that goes over, you know, the difference between coaching and therapy, which one's right, which one's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Very, very nuanced conversation. I would also recommend you go and watch that one.
Okay, so like I mentioned, you can like scrub through my last video and see like the screenshot of the text between us. But basically I had like reached out to her for help with sobriety, and she said, great, let's hop on Zoom and have a conversation about it. So we did a few days later, and this was like in March earlier this year. And we like talk about like what prompted me to want to go sober and just kind of like her experience with sobriety and everything. And she then starts the pitch of like, I do think like it'd be really great if we like didn't just talk as friends, like if we really worked on this together in a coaching relationship, and that like this is really crazy that like I've been brought to her, and like this must be like divine intervention that we're like coming back into each other's lives and everything.
That in itself is so manipulative.
Oh, I missed you so much. I'm so glad that we've reconnected. This is the universe pointing us in the right direction.
No, this is you wanting to close a sale.
And I was like, yeah, like I think it could be great, but I still just like need a little bit of time to think about it, because like again, a lot of stuff was going on with me at the time. And she said, well, normally it is like ADHD coaching, but like I'm more than happy to do like sobriety coaching with you.
Oh my God, sorry, I have to keep pausing. Another red flag. I should have had a red flag counter on this video. It is a huge problem if a coach is telling you that they can help you with any single problem. Let's not forget the fact that this woman who is calling herself a coach has no credentials listed anywhere on the internet, and yet is now saying,
oh, I usually do ADHD coaching, but if you need sobriety coaching, I can help you with that too.
Again, it's giving desperate to close a sale, allegedly, in my opinion. And it's very concerning from a client perspective to have someone suggesting that they're able to help you solve any problem by any means. It's like the business coaches that can coach any kind of business. Like, to me, that has never made sense, because shouldn't you have some sort of specialization? Even if we look at like therapists, for example, most therapists have like a specific area of expertise. So the therapist you would go to for childhood trauma might not be the same therapist that you would go see for OCD tendencies. I suppose I bring this up because all of my videos, really the purpose of any of my content. Well, yes, I just like to yap, yap, yap on the internet. I also want, valuable takeaways for those of you watching to be able to apply to your own life, your own coaching relationships, and so on. If someone is telling you that they can help you with any problem despite their lack of qualifications, run the other way. I have no problem personally, again, like I kind of mentioned at the beginning, with the concept of like a sobriety coach, provided that person understands their scope, they have adequate training, and they understand what their role as a coach is versus like a therapist that's going to help you through your sobriety. However, some random lady who calls herself an ADHD coach just suddenly deciding one day that because she got sober, she's now also a sobriety coach. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
I've already sent you the invoice and the contract to sign. And I said, I really would like to think about it. And she's like, now's the time. Don't think, just do.
Oh my God. I am so sorry. I keep letting it play for like 5 seconds, but they're on the call. She's pitching her the program. She's saying,
I usually help people with ADHD, but I can be your sobriety coach. I already sent you the invoice. You should pay.
This is like every single red flag that you should look out for on a sales call. Every box is being checked off right now.
Like, you won't regret doing it. So I see the invoice, and the invoice is for $3,000 for 3 months. And these are going to be like once a week, 45-minute long sessions. And I, just got really caught up in the moment. And I said, you know what? And I was really desperate. I think that's like a key thing. I was really desperate. And I did. I signed the contract and I tried to pay. And my card wouldn't go through because it was like an unknown vendor through Stripe. And my bank was like, we're not going to authorize this payment. And I was like, oh, well, it won't go through. It's Friday night. Like, I'll just call in the morning and like get it sorted out. And she's like, I really want you to do it right now. Call your bank right now. And I'll like stay on the phone with you. So we're like on Zoom and I'm like calling my bank, and I tried for like 30 minutes and none of it was working. And eventually I was just like, okay, I'm like, it's not working. I'm just gonna have to try again in the morning. And I don't know why I felt like I was being held hostage. I was in my home office. I was on Zoom. I could have just like hung up the call, and I honestly wish I did. But again, I was just like at a really low point and kept going, and that's on me. And I soon learned to regret it. So yeah, I guess in the next part I'll talk about like what our coaching was look like, and then in the fourth part I'll do like how we ended.
Okay, again, an all too common experience that we've heard about time and time again on this channel, being on a sales call with a coach who is basically forcing you, or so it feels, to pay right then and there. I think I talked about this in literally last week's video. If you are someone, such as myself, who struggles with people-pleasing tendencies, you are much more likely to be susceptible to these kind of tactics where you're on a sales call, you don't want to disappoint the other person. Even if your credit card is literally getting declined, you're just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just call my bank and figure it out. Like, no, I'm not saying no to this person. I can totally empathize with her situation. In fact, I've been in that position, not so much where my credit card gets declined, but where you're on a sales call and the person wants you to buy right then. And so I know how awkward and uncomfortable that can feel. And please, if you've been in that situation, let us know in the comments. But it is just, this story so far is just all too familiar for the stories that we've heard time and time again on this channel. And this is so incredibly heartbreaking to listen to.
Okay, so yes, I did just pay $3,000 for her. So this is mid-March. And I will say, like, at the beginning, a lot of the techniques and stuff that we talked about for sobriety, like, was really useful. And I am glad that, like, at that really low point, I did have someone who, like, was, for all intents and purposes, like, on my team. Where it started getting weird is, like, when I did my intake form, she did mention something about, like, human design. And I'd never heard about human design. And I genuinely thought that it was going to be, like, some sort of, like, psychology thing, or just kind of talking about how like we're like naturally inclined to like drink and like have addictive personalities. And boy, was I wrong. Human design is like similar to astrology. It uses your birth chart and it tells you like what kind of type you are. And if I had to guess, I don't really buy into human design, if I'm going to be 100%. After 3 months of learning about it, I'm not into it. And that is like mainly what drove our coaching, was human design. And if I do believe that's like what a lot of our ADHD coaching is like talking about your human design.
Okay, I find this particular comment about the human design piece super interesting, just because nowhere on this woman's website, mind you, it's like a single landing page, does she mention human design. And I feel like for those of you that are familiar with the online space, human design itself is like a very particular niche or modality, if that would be the right word. And if I was someone seeking assistance for literally anything, I think that that would be an important piece to disclose, because like I know for me personally, I'm not really into that kind of thing. And if the practitioner that I was going to hire used that as their primary modality to help me, I wouldn't really be interested. So it's kind of interesting that she doesn't actually disclose that anywhere and like traps you into a $3,000 coaching program before you find out it's actually about human design. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that.
She does my chart, and it comes to find out that like I'm in like the 1% of people. I'm a reflector, which I guess is like the finger of God. And she kept talking about how like I'm the finger of God. That would come up like all throughout like the 3 months that we were talking. It's just like I'm the finger of God, and when this like reckoning happens in 2027 and the new world order comes through, that like I'm gonna be one of the people who's like really leading it. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. I don't really know how this is like relevant to sobriety. And that is truthfully like when I started to check out. It was probably like a month and a half into our session, so it's like mid-May at this point. She was also out of town for part of it, so like we started sessions like early April. April was fine. May it started to get weird, and the rest of the sessions in June, I just like hated it. All we would talk about is like human design, but we wouldn't even really like talk about it and discuss it. She would just like read from this book and talk about like the guru or like the guy who like came up with human design, and it was just like it was weird and bizarre, and I didn't like it. And it also just like wasn't helpful at all. So I like basically started to check out, and like luckily our sessions were like starting to come to an end, which like thank God, because in June is when it got really fucking weird. And this is when ChatGPT came into the picture. Don't worry, we're going to talk about ChatGPT.
Okay, so to me, that last part there was pretty interesting that she's like learning or getting coached from a book. Like the coach is using a book to do the coaching, and then obviously the mention of ChatGPT, which we'll get into. I'm getting vibes of, inexperience and lack of true understanding of what you're even coaching on if you're constantly referencing materials, but I digress.
Okay, so we're now getting to the part of coaching with Kendra, part 4, whatever. I don't know where I am in this, but basically I'm heated right now. Basically, I start disengaging in our sessions, and I think she's really picking up on it, and she's just like reading me all this shit about human design. And then she also starts doing this thing with cognitive behavioral therapy, which I am familiar with CBT. She is not licensed to do CBT.
Would you believe it? A coach practicing outside of scope, guys. Unbelievable. I've never heard of a single coach practicing outside of their scope. Oh my God, it's always CBT or some knockoff version of CBT, but they don't want to hear it.
And when we first started our sessions, she like made sure to like reiterate that like she wasn't a licensed therapist and therefore like isn't going to do things like that. And then turned around months later and started doing cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is also when she started talking about Henry, aka ChatGPT. And I'm not very like, I use artificial intelligence at work, like it's very encouraged. So like I'm very familiar with like what these language learning models are like. And I know that like you can't just like start asking it random shit about yourself, like at all. That is how spiritual psychosis happens. And truthfully, that might just be what's happening at this point. So she's like encouraging me to use ChatGPT for cognitive behavioral therapy, which is super dangerous. And I don't even know, like, I can't even tell you like how crazy that is to me. And that's when I was like, okay, like we're done. How many more sessions do we have? Can we end this nightmare? So luckily my sobriety is going well, because coaching's definitely not. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to use ChatGPT. And she was just like, I would just really encourage you to do it.
Okay, I think that this demonstrates to me a lack of credentials, a lack of understanding, just a very seriously glaring evidence of inexperience, for lack of a better term. It's like I'm having trouble even formulating a sentence, but it's so seemingly dangerous to me to think that there are people who are truly just so, I don't know if ignorant or delusional is the right word, but they lack the understanding that, again, much like I said at the beginning of this video, their lived experience, your lived experience, does not qualify you to help people with significant or severe complex issues that they're facing in their lives. No matter how good your intentions are, good intentions do not equal qualification to help people solve their problems. And so the fact that this coach is essentially encouraging her client to, just use ChatGPT for your therapy sessions, to me, is another one of these red flags. And listen, I get it. I know there are people out there who cannot afford access to therapy. And I know for a fact, I've read Reddit forums of people that use ChatGPT as their therapist. If that's all you have available to you and that works for you, that's great. But please, if you are doing that, proceed with caution. And if you're a coach that's charging people thousands of dollars a month to work with you, please stop referring them to a tool that's fucking free. This is crazy.
At this point, we only have like one session left. And she's like, I really think that you would be a great candidate to do this past life therapy that I've really been working on. And so she essentially decides to use me like as a guinea pig to get into past life therapy. And I am not into it. Like, do I kind of believe in past lives? Sure. Do I think that like this random chick that I know from Oregon who has now telling me to use ChatGPT for my therapist is going to help me discover what past life blockages are like helping me? Absolutely the not.
Exactly. Consider the source, people. Consider the source. Consider their experience. Consider their credentials.
So we get on Zoom, and she's trying to do this through Zoom. So we get on Zoom, and she starts asking the spirit and doing all this stuff, and we just start like speed running through these past lives. And like, I'm dying, I'm killing people. I say, hell yeah, she said that's really not a good thing, whatever. But basically, like, that was our last session. She's like, you should totally leave me a review. And I was like, I'm gonna be honest, Kendra, I am not gonna do that. Like, I am not happy with where this ended. And I think it's really weird that you're telling me to use ChatGPT. And I think it's really weird that we're doing this past life therapy. Like, that part's not helpful. Again, I really think the beginning was helpful, but like towards the end, it got really weird. So that's what happened. I had to come inside because I was getting too heated. Because the more and more I think about it, the more I'm just like, this is literally insane. And I feel like a lot of my trust is broken.
I think that this is an interesting example of just how unexpectedly these relationships can evolve. Like, this woman, Emily, approaches this other woman, Kendra, who she already has rapport with, an existing relationship with, asking for help for a very real problem that she's facing. Because Kendra has explained that she herself has gone through the same experience. Presumably, she's been documenting it through social media. She seems to be doing, great in her life, or a lot better than she was, to the point where Emily sees her as an authority in that space and reaches out hoping to be able to get some help. What appears to have happened since that time is not only did Kendra, in my opinion, allegedly use manipulative sales tactics on the sales call, which, mind you, she didn't even disclose was a sales call apparently, to get Emily to buy into her coaching. But then as the coaching relationship evolved, it took a really weird and uncomfortable turn. Again, allegedly. I don't know this as fact. I'm going based on the story that's been presented. But all that to say, it appears to me that this is an example of abusing an existing relationship, emotionally manipulating someone that you already have an existing level of rapport with. For what benefit? I'm not even sure. Because at the end of the day, the client's not even happy with the results that you've tried to give her. Like, this is just absolutely mind-boggling to me.
So to recap, go and watch those other videos, and I'll leave it with this for right now. So we had started our coaching relationship right after she stopped seeing the psychiatrist that she was like in love with and like broke up with her other therapist. And I had no idea that this was going on as I came to her like in a time of need, and then was asked to pay $3,000 for coaching. And again, the sobriety thing was helpful. I was sober during that time. I am now with a much different path of care. But when we derailed and started doing cognitive behavioral therapy via ChatGPT, doing human design work, but not really doing the work, just reading from the book from like the guru dude, and then finally doing past life therapy and exploring all my past lives with a pendulum via Zoom, I was done and I was out. And I literally was talking to like my friends and family and being like, I feel like I really made a huge mistake, like going into this. Like, yes, it did help with my sobriety, but like at what cost? Literally what cost? $3,000 to be told to use ChatGPT.
Okay, please chime in the comments if you've had a similar experience. I know I have. Where you spend a lot of money and you don't get the results you expected, but then you try to like piecemeal together, well, there was some silver lining, like this one good thing came of the relationship. No, we don't even have to do that anymore, okay? If we're disappointed with the service we received, it was not rendered as promised, we don't have to sit around and try and cherry pick good excuses to make ourselves feel good about or better about our bad investment. Just call it what it is.
And then honestly, all of this to come and find out, and I get on TikTok randomly and see her blowing up over this like crazy, insane delusion between her and her psychiatrist. And I realized that like, oh, I was just coached for the last 3 months by someone who is not in their right of mind. Like, I don't want to say that like she's psychotic or anything like that because that's rude and like not right. Like, this is someone that I was friends with for a really long time. And like, I still am going to have to like wrestle with that. And the fact that like now that I'm unpacking all these feelings about like feeling like I got taken advantage of and everything, but like, yeah, this is a lot. And like, she's a lot. And the fact that she like isn't acknowledging that like maybe there was some side of it that like was to her. And like, we don't get to see the side of the psychiatrist because obviously like he's a professional and like, I don't want to discount anyone's lived experience, but girly pop calling him a Pisces isn't why it's going on. It sounds like you were receiving palatable care and instead you chose to cling on to that for some reason. And now you're asking people to pay you thousands of dollars to lead them down a path that like you have no business leading them down at all. And that's that on that. I'm going to go fix dinner and do something else besides this because honestly, what the fuck?
Okay, if anything, let this be an example of the fact that the coaching industry desperately needs regulation. The reason why I wanted to make this video is because this story, to me, isn't just messy TikTok drama, although it is. This story exposes the very real risks that come alongside taking advice from people who have no fucking clue what they're doing. There's no code of ethics, there's no mandatory boundaries, there's no even understanding of what those boundaries might look like if you are a coach that has literally zero certification other than your own lived experience. More importantly, there's no governing body to hold people like this accountable when they act like this. And so let's just say that Kendra's story about falling in love with her psychiatrist and her psychiatrist knowing that she's in love with him and continuing the relationship, let's just say that that were true. At least he's operating under a governing body that can reprimand him for that behavior. For her to then turn around and take advantage of clients, people who are coming to her with very real life problems that have very serious implications, and to then take advantage of them with zero accountability, zero recourse, zero anybody to come and, reprimand her for her behavior, to me is just absolutely astounding. This behavior is so dangerous. And this isn't necessarily an isolated example to this specific story. Again, I think it speaks to a greater issue that we talk about time and time again on the channel here of this lack of regulation in this industry where anyone can wake up on any given day and decide to slap the title of coach on themselves and start charging people thousands of dollars for their alleged knowledge about the amazing life that they can help them create. And it's always, always, always those who are in the most vulnerable of positions finding themselves being taken advantage of. I'm going to link to all of the videos that I showed in this video from the creator sharing her experience in the description so that you can go ahead and support her, watch her content, leave your comments and thoughts there. I would love for us to continue this conversation down in the comments below here as well. If you have your own coaching scam story you want me to read out here on the channel, the form where you can do so is linked in the description of every single one of my videos. Thank you so much for being here, specifically those of you in the Mastermind VIP, as well as my rich friends in the billionaire tier. Take care, comb your hair, and I'm going to leave you on screen here with a woman who spent $50,000 on a manifestation coach. So love that for us. Okay, I'll see you in my next video.